Well, howdy all. Great to be sort of with you. I'm actually pre-recording this presentation because I'm hoping to be with you in real time, but just in case something goes wrong, because I have a really important meeting just before this meeting right now. And if I'm running a little bit late, we thought let's just do a recording just in case. So hopefully we won't be playing this, but if we do, I should be there very shortly and to chat with you in the group meetups at the end anyway. So I have an interesting title to this month's Lift Meetup topic. And the topic, as you've already seen, I'm sure that you've read this, is curious. And so I'm curious to know whether you're curious about what I'll be talking about today. But I'm assuming that the name gives it away a little bit. All right, I'm going to start by sharing my slides with you. And let's take it away. All right. So, first of all, I got a little joke for you. I heard this some time back, and it gives me a laugh every time I think about this one. So, there is this man's walking along side of the road, and there's this very tall fence, and he can't see over the fence, but he can hear someone on the other side of the fence constantly calling out, and they're calling out the same thing. They're saying, 13, 13, and again, 13, this incessant 13, 13, 13. And this man just can't help himself. He's thinking, I wonder what's going on over there. 13, what would that mean? What's that all about? Anyway, as he looks down this wall, this high fence, he notices that there is this small little hole where he can peer through. And so he thought, right, I'm going to satisfy my curiosity right now. And so he peeks a look through, and the moment he does, bang, this finger comes straight through the hole, pokes him straight in the eye, and as he's clutching his eye, he hears over the other side of the fence, 14, 14. So he was the 14th victim there. Curious. I hope you got a laugh out of that. I think it's quite a funny one. Curiosity, isn't this a fascinating thing? And I'm hoping that you're a curious person. There's really good reasons why I'm hoping for that, as we're about to see in just a moment. But whilst it is true that curiosity is probably not a great thing if you're a cat, and I love this little cartoon here that, this is basically a death sentence for this cat. Sorry, you've got curiosity. And as we know, curiosity killed the cat. But whilst it may have killed the cat, what we actually know for humans, there's actually a whole lot of benefits, well-being benefits that come from being curious. And they come from both in terms of personal well-being, but also interpersonal well-being as well. So let's chat about that. And let's start by considering the whole idea of our personal well-being. I actually there's one, obviously there's many, but there's one that jumps to mind here, one event that happened to me that has been quite pivotal in changing the way that I've approached life. So you have these sometimes you get these little defining moments. And for me, there was a professor that I really looked up to. And this is when I was a relatively junior academic. I was a sort of budding, I was a lecturer. This was probably going back about 20 years ago now. And anyway, I was in a meeting with a whole lot of other professors. And there was one, probably the leading the biggest name in the room was this gentleman by the name of Professor Gary Eger, who has subsequently become a real mentor to me and someone I look up to with great admiration. But anyway, we're in this room, and what sometimes happens, not picking on anyone in particular, but when professors sort of get together and academics get together, they start talking about this and they're talking about that. And it's almost like, some people are trying to be the smartest person in the room. Anyway, I remember listening to this, and I kept waiting for, Professor Gary to say some things and contribute. But he was asking questions, and he's asking a lot of questions. I'm thinking, this is interesting. Like, I'm waiting for his insights, but he's asking a whole lot of questions. And then he did, contribute some interesting insights as well. But at the end of the discussion, he made this statement. I'll never forget that. He said, this has been a fantastic discussion. He said, I'm curious to learn more. And I thought, what? Wait a sec. Because I think that as this, high-end professor, he knows everything. And there he was, quite open and willing to admit in front of, all these other academics that wow, I've learned stuff today. And, this has been really a value and interest. And I remember this having this really key sort of turn this in my brain where I thought, do you know what? Here's someone who's just declared that they don't know everything and they're asking questions and demonstrating curiosity. And I don't think any worse of him for that. In fact, I think more. And so I actually, true story, I made a really intentional pivot in the way that I approached life. I thought, I don't want to ever be the smartest person in the room. I actually want to be the one that approaches life with wide-eyed wonder. I want to be the curious one. I want to, and my mantra now, and I often say this, is I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn. And it reminds me a little bit, Gary's quote or the words he said from Isaac Newton. And Isaac Newton, when he was sort of debriefing and reflecting on his life when he was towards the end of his life, he actually makes this statement. He says that, I don't know how the world actually perceives me or sees me because he'd done, made these massive contributions. He's an academic giant. And this is what he says. He says, but to myself, I'm only a child just playing on the beach whilst the vast ocean of truth lie undiscovered before me. And what he was willing to acknowledge is that, I just have this insatiable interest and curiosity to learn new things. And what we know is that ability to front up, to be present with this what we call a growth mindset. I'm here to learn. In fact, it was Carol Dweck that actually wrote and coined these terms, the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And what we know is that when people have this growth mindset, and you can see some of the attributes of a growth mindset there. For example, failure is an opportunity to grow. Oh, if it doesn't quite go to plan, I can learn something from that. So that's the growth mindset speaking. As compared to a fixed mindset is like, oh, failure is the limit of my abilities. I'm not good enough. So therefore, that's why I failed. Growth mindset, oh, I've learned a whole lot of new things. Next time I'll probably be able to do that. And so what we know is that when people have this growth mindset, it actually makes them more resilient. And so unsurprisingly, what we know is, and there are many studies that link having this curious approach to life, being open to learning, having this growth mindset is a really powerful way to support our resilience and hence our mental health. We know it's linked to lower rates of depression when people have that growth mindset. So I'm interested, to what extent do you exhibit that? Certainly curiosity, that growth mindset, seeking to learn, having that aptitude really does feed into our personal well-being. But it also feeds into our interpersonal relationships as well. One of my colleagues, Simon Matthews, and some of you may have already come across Simon's work, but he's involved in health coaching. He's a psychologist. And I've learned a whole lot from him about this process of actually connecting with other people and helping other people particularly on behavior change journeys. And the whole health coaching space, sort of flipping on the head the way that we used to do things. We used to think that what we should do, particularly for a health professional, is we should tell people what they should do. And what we've discovered is generally people really don't like being told what they should do. What a better approach is to actually understand people, to be curious in the right kind of way about people and about what works for them and what doesn't work for them, what their values are, what's of interest to them, what they would like to do. And what we know that from a behavior change perspective, when we approach it in a curious way, and Simon talks about this, demonstrating curiosity. What it does is actually it cultivates connection and it demonstrates empathy. And so having this approach of, I'm here to learn with you and learn from you. You know yourself better than I know yourself. So let's talk about what that might look like. And what we know is that this curious approach, when a health professional, but doesn't not just health professionals, when someone comes to another person with a curious mindset, right? I'm here to learn with you. I'm no better than you. I'm just here to engage and let's learn together. We know that the outcomes and the connectedness that comes from that is all the more powerful. I love this whole idea. And in fact, Stephen Covey, as you know, probably he wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits that he talks about is that successful people, highly effective people, the way that they connect with others, they have this approach where first of all they seek to understand and then to be understood. And this is just a magic bullet when it comes to conflict resolution. Coming with a curious approach, actually trying to walk in someone else's shoes to understand them and learn from them, and then to be understood secondary. We know that it does huge things, wonders for our interpersonal relationships. So this curious approach to life, I'm wondering to what extent you have that. We know that there are very definite benefits to our personal well-being, but also our interpersonal connectedness and well-being as well. And so I have some questions that I'd love us to reflect on. And here they are. Number one, how curious are you? And what might you do to cultivate curiosity? We do know that you can cultivate it. How would you do that? What would that look like? Do you have a growth mindset? And do you consider yourself a lifelong learner? Right. As I said, my mantra now is I'm here to learn. And it really has been a wonderful thing. You don't have to pretend to know things that you don't know. And you grow in really powerful ways. Second question, do you find that showing genuine interest in others is a powerful way to create connection? Being curious. But flip side of that, how might you show curiosity towards someone without coming across as overly curious, also known as nosy? So I'll get you to reflect on that question too. And then the final question, what is one way that you could exercise your curiosity this month? All right, let's break up and let's chat about that.